Welcome into the Whole Hog pregame show. I am Seth Campbell, going to be joined by Scotty Bordelon here in just a second via Zoom again. We're getting kind of used to the Zoom thing, Scotty. It's been like 9 months, and so we've definitely gotten a little bit of used to this, haven't we?
Yeah, I'm over it. I'll be real honest. I'm very over it.
Yeah, me too. I'm a little bit over it as well. But maybe, just maybe, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. But there is no light at the end of the tunnel for the Arkansas Razorbacks, as they have got three semi-challenging games. You could say they could be worse in the SEC, especially coming off of what you just faced in Florida. But you got the defending national champions, another rivalry game, and then the number one team in the nation on their schedule. So it's a tough task for the Razorbacks, regardless of how the perceptions of these teams have changed. But what's an even tougher task right now for the Razorbacks is indeed battling COVID-19. Sam Pittman gave us an update the last time he will talk to the media, which was on Thursday, before the Razorbacks play. And he's still saying that they have enough to meet the prescribed amount of people, but it's getting awfully close to that cutoff before the Razorbacks won't be able to play on Saturday.
Yeah, I think sometimes we like to ask Sam Pittman, personnel related questions. Is this guy going to be able to play? Is this guy going to be able to go? Who's out this week? He was pretty blunt, I think, with reporters on Thursday. He said straight up that Arkansas was pretty thin as of Thursday in terms of its roster numbers and players who would be available for the LSU game. But he said as of that point, it was about 2:15 on Thursday. He thinks Arkansas would be able to play the game. He's pretty adamant about that. But there's the Thursday testing and the results from that Arkansas gets back on Friday was probably gonna make the difference. Yeah, I mean I think it's just like a few positive cases, but what really gets you is the contact tracing and the quarantining. I think we've seen that with all the cancellations in the SEC this season. There hasn't been just inordinate amounts of positive cases, but it's been kind of the tentacles that the positive cases have. It's reached position groups and multiple position groups at some schools that forced cancellations and postponements.
Yeah, I think that we are seeing COVID-19 take effect. I mean, we knew that it was going to happen all throughout college football. It's just one of those things with you. This is something that you had to prepare for all season long, but it's just a big question mark for us trying to preview the game. I mean, for Arkansas, for LSU, even trying to prepare for Arkansas, you just don't know what is going to happen. And so that is a big question mark and something that we would love to prepare you for, you the fan, but we just can't because we won't know until Saturday morning when the teams are taking the field for warmups. You can get a better idea. But even then, not until guys are actually dressed out, 30, 45 minutes before the game, taking through real pregame reps, are we going to figure out that, hey, this is who is in and who is out. So with that, I encourage you to follow Scotty at NWA Scotty on Twitter. He will be there at the game, so he'll give you all those updates. But you can also follow WholeHog Sports as well. They'll keep you updated. We will keep you.
Yeah,
updated.
I'll have all the pregame running live updates for the pregame and that kind of thing on the website. Me and Tom Murphy and Clay helps out too. We try to get a pretty good grasp of who's on the field for warmups and who's not there. We give you a pretty good idea of who's absent and who's not.
That could change the entire complexion of the game. But moving forward, we're going to talk about what we do know, and that is right now that there is still a game happening, Arkansas versus LSU. And really, when you take a look at the Razorbacks, their run game has really been able to set up their pass game. And if you look at the weaknesses for LSU, I think that pass game is where they have a big weakness. At Mississippi State game, very first of the season, kind of shows you that. But Arkansas, with the loss of Devian Warren, a receiver that would help you take the top off of a defense, how big is it for Arkansas to get a little bit of a pass game going against that LSU defense?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that Arkansas will be able to get it going. I mean, Felipe Franks he's been really solid. I mean, pretty much every week, except for with the exception of the Georgia game, and he still had his moments there. I think something to keep an eye on is that left hand that he injured against Florida. Obviously, it's not his throwing hand, so it's not going to affect, him putting touch on passes, but it can affect. He might have to go to a silent count. I mean, if you're clapping your hand, clapping your right into your left, that left hand's, I mean, you're going to get tired of doing that over and over, especially if it's injured. That's something to keep an eye on. I think we'll probably see, like we have in past weeks, like a pretty heavy dose of Mike Woods and Traylon Burks. And Sam Pittman on Monday said that when he announced Davion Warren was going to be out for the season with an ACL injury, he's kind of calling on Trey Knox and Tyson Morris to be guys to kind of rise in that receivers room. Trey Knox has been virtually non-existent for Arkansas this year, outside of a few catches at Mississippi State. Sam Pittman has liked the way that he has handled the situation from going from a guy as a true freshman who was starting almost every week, and I think he was one of just a couple of guys with like multiple touchdown catches as a true freshman. Now he's not starting, he's not even playing. But Sam Pittman has liked the maturity that Trey Knox has shown throughout the season, and he thinks that there might be a little extra pep in his step this week. Getting ready for the LSU game, there's an opportunity there for him, and he said he thinks. All indications are that Trey Knox is pretty excited about this weekend and the opportunity he's got to produce for the first time in what is it, going over a month.
Knox and Burks, it seemed to be, when they came in, would be good complements to each other, of Burks being the speedster and Knox being a good possession receiver. It's really been Mike Woods that has been that possession receiver this entire season, and Knox really hasn't been able to get open. But Knox is a bigger body. Maybe he can take advantage of that. I thought that where he scored a lot of his touchdowns his freshman year was Arkansas taking advantage of his size in the red zone, throwing the ball up there against maybe a smaller corner. Maybe he can find some openings and maybe bully a little bit of a smaller corner if he gets matched up with one against LSU. All right, flipping over to the other side of the ball, Scotty, defense for Arkansas. They play a lot of zone this entire year, but they're playing TJ Finley, a freshman quarterback for LSU, and we've kind of heard that the game plan is going to be to send pressure towards him. When you send pressure, it's rather hard to play zone on the back end of sending pressure. So this is going to have to be a balancing act for the Razorbacks.
Yeah, I think so. One thing, Arkansas is not playing, a veteran, experienced guy this week. Miles Brennan hasn't played for LSU since I think their loss to Missouri, with an abdominal injury, and so they've called on a couple of true freshmen to play for him, and TJ Finley's gotten the start in LSU's last two games, even though they've played two games in the last month, I think. TJ Finley, I think the arm strength is there, certainly, but I think he's still a true freshman, and this is going to be his second road start. His first one didn't go very well, at all against Auburn. I think Arkansas is just going to try to, send a lot at him, make him process a lot in a short amount of time, send pressure, try to rattle him. Greg Brooks said earlier in the week that was kind of the game plan. They want to rattle TJ Finley to the point where Max Johnson, the guy who has been in quarantine until I think Wednesday this week, they want to force him into the game. If Arkansas does that, then I don't think there's any doubt Arkansas's got a really good shot to, maybe possibly run away with the game. TJ Finley is not a bad quarterback by any stretch. He's got a huge arm and played really well against South Carolina. I think maybe, that was LSU's last game. But no, that was Auburn. Yeah, maybe so the week before Auburn, he played pretty well against South Carolina. Arkansas is going to mix it up. Arkansas is going to mix it up for sure. I think and he's a big dude, so they're going to have to get pretty good shots on him to take him to the ground. But just sending a lot at him and making him make good, quick decisions and a flash is going to be a big deal.
Yeah, TJ Finley he has had a pretty good start against South Carolina, and then something that he would like to forget against Auburn, where, of course, Kevin Steele, the Auburn defensive coordinator, he is a fantastic defensive coordinator and can keep LSU off their feet or on their feet, pardon me. But it'll be interesting to see if Finley, he has that a little bit in the back of his mind the last time he went out there in Auburn, and if well, to quote a former NFL quarterback, maybe they can get him to see ghosts. But like you're mentioning, Scotty, it's kind of crazy. It'll be November 21st when Arkansas plays LSU. That'll be LSU's first game in the month of November. They haven't played since October 31st, since Halloween, and something that we're going to talk to Matt Jones about a little bit later and how that might affect the LSU Tigers. But it'll be interesting to see how this game plays out for sure, and if there is a little bit of rest on that Tigers side. All right, time for predictions, Scotty. Who do you have?
Yeah, so my prediction has changed a little bit since we had to send our predictions for the LSU game to Clay last weekend. I still got Arkansas win. I had Arkansas winning 31. I think it was 31-21 in the magazine. I think I'm going to drop down to 27-17 Arkansas. I think Arkansas is going to win this game. I wouldn't be surprised if Traylon Smith has another solid game. He's been Arkansas's best back, I think since the Texas A&M game. I don't think there's any question about it. And, I think Mike Woods and Traylon Burks are, they're enough on the perimeter for Felipe Franks. And, Felipe's almost played flawless football, for the better part of a month. I don't think he threw an interception. He hasn't thrown an interception in a long time. I don't think since the Ole Miss game. So he's been really sharp, keeping the ball out of harm's way. As long as he holds on to that thing tight, when he takes off and runs, I think he's going to play clean football again. And I just don't have enough confidence in LSU's offense to be able to score at a consistent clip against Arkansas's defense.
I'll give you my prediction later, Scotty, in the WholeHog pregame show, but I will say a bold prediction that I'll give right now. I think that Arkansas is going to come out with at least 3 sacks. A team that I think Arkansas only has 8 all season long. I may have just made up that number, but I thought that was off the top of my head. That sounds about right.
It's not many.
They're not very high in the SEC, but I think they'll come out with a few sacks because they're going to send more pressure. And if they can get those sacks and then get a turnover or 2, then I think that Arkansas is going to be able to really hang in this game. I had Arkansas winning by a lot. In my prediction that I sent into Hogs Illustrated, we're going to tame that down a little bit, I believe. But I'll tell you that.
You were really confident last weekend.
Hey, yeah. A bit. You have to calm yourself down. Listen, those are sent in Sunday morning. Sometimes just wake up in a good mood. Sometimes, it just kind of affects my predictions. And also COVID does too. All right. Well, Scotty, really appreciate you joining us here.
No problem, man.
All right. Well, for Scotty Bordelon, we're going to hit a quick break. But when we come back, don't go anywhere because we'll have Matt Jones talking about the LSU Tigers. Welcome back into the WholeHog pregame show. Seth Campbell joined now by Matt Jones. And Matt, let's talk a little bit more about LSU. The Razorbacks, LSU play at 11 a.m. on Saturday. LSU has won 4 straight, but they have been off for quite a while, 3 weeks. They haven't played since Halloween. How do you think that'll affect the Tigers in this game versus the Hogs?
Yeah, it reminds me of a bowl game. A lot of times if you play in a bowl game, you've been off for 3.5, 4 weeks, maybe a little bit longer, depending on when the game is. But it'll be interesting to see how it affects them. Obviously, they're going to be more fresh physically than they would be, at another point in the season. But I also think that there's there's a potential there to be rusty, and it's not like they were even playing that well before they went off. And the key is, what did you do during your 3 weeks? Well, during 3 weeks, they were unable to scrimmage a lot because they had players out with COVID issues. And I think I read at one point that their punter was even running, the offense as their quarterback. And so it'll be interesting to see. Different teams handle long times off better than others. LSU handled it really well last year when they were off for a while and played Oklahoma in the Peach Bowl and then beat Clemson in the national championship game. But this is a much different LSU team. They lost so many players from last year. They've still got the same head coach, got some of that coaching staff back, but this is a much different LSU team than the one that handled it so well last year.
Yeah, you're not kidding. A much different LSU team. I mean, their record describes that, their play on the field describes that, and the quarterback position describes that as well. TJ Finley is the guy that the Tigers have turned to ever since Miles Brennan went down. He is a big fella in the backfield from Ponchatoula, Louisiana, nonetheless, but he is still just a freshman. And he's been battling as well for that starting position. How do you think Finley is going to play on the road against the Hogs?
I think he's got the potential to be a pretty good quarterback in time, but he's still a freshman who's only started a couple of games, and he looked good against South Carolina. But I think as the years gone on, we've kind of figured out that a lot of quarterbacks look good against South Carolina. Didn't look good against Auburn, and I would probably compare Arkansas's defense if they're at full strength. And there's some question, whether or not that'll be the case on Saturday. But if they're full strength, I would compare them more to an Auburn defense than a South Carolina defense. It's been a group that's really good this year. LSU doesn't run the ball particularly well. They like to pass the ball. This is more of a passing offense, kind of like last year, even though it's different. They've got new players and some new coaches on that side of the ball. And I think the way that you attack a young quarterback is you put pressure on them. If you put pressure on an older quarterback like a Kyle Trask or a Kellen Mond or a Mac Jones, I think they're going to make you pay. But sometimes you can get away with doing that against a younger quarterback just because they haven't figured out the speed of the game yet. And so I think it's a decent matchup for Arkansas, again, assuming that Arkansas is at full strength Saturday. And that's that's really the big unknown going into this game, even more so than how does LSU's quarterback play and who's going to play quarterback for them is who's going to be on the field for Arkansas, because the reports that we've heard are that there are going to be multiple players out this week. It's just a matter of who are they, and we're probably not going to we're not going to know that until the pregame warmups.
Yeah, you are exactly right, Matt. And when you think about who you are supposed to be missing, Sam Pittman said that Arkansas has an adequate amount of people, but adequate can mean you have just enough. So It'll be interesting to see right up till game time on who the Razorbacks have out on the field. Well, when flipping over to the other side of the ball, Matt, Arkansas's offense playing against the LSU defense, what is going to be, you think, the best way for the Hogs to attack the LSU defense?
Well, they haven't been good against the pass. I mean, that's been their big weakness this year. They are the worst pass defense in the SEC by quite a bit if you look at the statistics. And I know the Mississippi State game played into that when they gave up 623 yards in the opener. But, they didn't play well against the pass, even against Auburn. Auburn's a run-first football team, and Bo Nix threw for 300 yards that game. And so, that's the way that teams have been attacking LSU. And, really their pass defense is fortunate that they haven't played Florida and Alabama yet. Those are the two best passing teams in the league, and those games have gotten postponed and may not even get played. And so they're not good against the pass. Arkansas is getting better in the passing game. They're getting a lot more big plays. You think about what Mike Woods has done the last couple of weeks. Of course, Treylon Burks has had some nice games. So I think that's how you attack LSU. You try to hit them over the top deep, and that's where they've been real susceptible this year.
All right, Matt, well, we'll wrap it up here on the WholeHog pregame show. What's your prediction?
Well, I picked Arkansas before the news of the COVID issues within the team this week. That's got the potential to really change this game. I mean, look at the money line. The money line was Arkansas by 1.5 points or 2 points, and then within minutes of us having a report that Arkansas was having some COVID issues, it flipped LSU by 2.5 or 3. And so I think that LSU is the safe pick because they're not the team that's dealing with this right now, at least that we know about, and we don't know what the extent of the COVID issues are going to be on the Arkansas roster. we don't know definitively who's out. You hear some names, but you can't say that definitively, until you actually see whether or not they're there on Saturday. And so I'm still going to go with Arkansas because I think Arkansas's got a better team than LSU. But certainly if you get there Saturday and you start watching warmups and, X, Y, and Z are not there, then certainly you could feel much worse about Arkansas's chances. But I think Arkansas's got a better team. I think that they are playing better. I think that they are more hungry to win this game. This game means a lot more to Arkansas's players than I think it means to LSU's players. And quite frankly, I think Arkansas has more to play for at this point in the year, being 3-4, than LSU does at 2-3. And you just kind of wonder where their mind is when you think about where they were at this point last year. It's a much different feeling within that program. So I think Arkansas by about 10 points. If all things are equal. But certainly, maybe you check back with me before kickoff on Saturday, and I may have a different feeling about that.
Yeah, I agree. There could definitely be a different feeling depending on who is dressed out for the Razorbacks on Saturday. But I did pick I did pick Arkansas as well on Sunday in our Hogs Illustrated prediction. So I'll stick with Arkansas. I think this one's going to be close, though. I think it'll be within that field goal range, going back and forth between who is and who isn't going to win. And I think it could really go between a toss-up of who is dressed out in red for the Razorbacks and how LSU responds to being off for so long and having players on the WholeHog podcast. We got to talk to Brooks Cabina, and he said that, they had players that didn't even get into practice after a 2-week quarantine until the middle of the week. So it'll be interesting to see how LSU handles that as well. All right. Well, for Matt Jones, I am Seth Campbell saying thank you for joining us, and please join us back here next week. So we'll get you ready for the one of the last. It's normally the last, but it is not the last this week. It was battle line rivalry between Arkansas and Missouri next week.